Hey there, folks. John Oliver here, ready to dive into the wild world of international money transfers. Now, you might be thinking, John, why on earth are we talking about this? Well, because it affects all of us, whether we're sending money to family overseas or buying something online from another country. Right now, the big cheese in global payments is SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. Catchy, right? Think of SWIFT as the postal service for banks. It doesn't actually move the money itself, but it provides a secure messaging system for banks to talk to each other and say, hey, we need to send some dough over here. But here's the thing. SWIFT can be slow, expensive, and a bit of a pain in the you-know-what. It's like trying to send a letter by carrier pigeon in the age of email. We're talking multiple intermediaries, currency conversions, and fees that seem to magically appear out of thin air. It's enough to make you want to stuff your cash in an envelope and hope for the best. But fear not, dear viewers, because there might be a new kid on the block, mBridge, and it could shake things up in a big way. So what is mBridge, you ask? Well, it's not a bridge made of MS, though that would be pretty cool. mBridge stands for Multiple Gateways Interface, and it's a project led by some pretty important folks, the Bank for International Settlements Innovation Hub, along with the central banks of China, Hong Kong, Thailand, and the United Arab Emirates. Now, this isn't just some pie-in-the-sky idea. They've actually built a prototype and tested it out with real banks. And guess what? It seems to be working pretty darn well. mBridge is designed to make cross-border payments faster, cheaper, and more efficient than ever before. Think of it as the high-speed rail of international money transfers. But how does it work, you ask? Well, that's where things get really interesting. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of how mBridge works, let's talk about its relationship with SWIFT. Are they destined for a hostile takeover, a bitter rivalry, or maybe even a beautiful partnership? Okay, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself with that last one. The truth is, it's still too early to say for sure how things will shake out. Some experts think mBridge could eventually replace SWIFT altogether. Others believe the two systems could coexist and even complement each other. Imagine SWIFT handling the messaging part, while mBridge takes care of the actual movement of money. It'd be like having a super efficient tag team for global payments. Of course, there are challenges to overcome. We're talking about different countries, different regulations, and different currencies all trying to play nicely together. But hey, if we can put a man on the moon, surely we can figure out how to send money across borders without it costing an arm and a leg, right? All right, let's get down to the technical nitty-gritty. mBridge isn't just some fancy new app, it's built on some seriously cutting-edge technology. We're talking about distributed ledger technology, DLT, and wholesale central bank digital currencies, WCBCs. Now, I know what you're thinking. John, my brain already hurts just hearing those words, but bear with me because this stuff is actually pretty cool. DLT is basically a fancy way of saying shared database. Imagine a giant Excel spreadsheet that all the banks involved in a transaction can access and update in real time. That's DLT in a nutshell. And WCBDCs, well, they're like digital versions of the cash we carry around in our pockets, except they're issued and backed by central banks. Think of it as having digital dollars, euros, or yuan that can be sent across borders instantly and securely. By combining DLT and WCBECs, mBridge can bypass the need for those pesky intermediaries that slow down traditional cross-border payments. It's like taking a direct flight instead of hopping on multiple connecting flights with long layovers. Section 5. Speed and savings, the allure of mBridge for cross-border transactions. Now let's talk about the good stuff. What's in it for us regular folks? Well, with mBridge, cross-border payments could become as quick and easy as sending a text message. Imagine sending money to your family overseas and having it arrive in their account within seconds without having to pay exorbitant fees. That's the promise of mBridge. And it's not just about speed and convenience. mBridge could also lead to significant cost savings for businesses and individuals alike. Those hefty fees that banks currently charge for international transfers, yeah, those could become a thing of the past, but it's not just about saving a few bucks here and there. Faster and cheaper cross-border payments could have a ripple effect throughout the global economy, boosting trade, investment, and economic growth. It's like giving the entire financial system a much-needed shot of espresso. Section 6. Challenging the dollar. Could mBridge reshape global currency dynamics? Now here's where things get really interesting. mBridge has the potential to shake up not just the world of cross-border payments, but also the global balance of power. How, you ask? Well, it all comes down to the mighty US dollar. Right now, the dollar reigns supreme as the world's reserve currency. It's the currency that everyone wants to hold, the one that's used for most international transactions. But mBridge could change all that. By making it easier to use other currencies like the Chinese yuan, mBridge could chip away at the dollar's dominance. Now, I'm not saying the dollar is going to disappear overnight, but mBridge could create a more level playing field for other currencies, leading to a more multipolar financial system. And that could have major implications for everything from global trade to geopolitics. Section 7. Real-world applications, mBridge in action. Okay, enough with the theoretical stuff. Let's talk about how mBridge could actually be used in the real world. Imagine this, you're a small business owner in the US, and you want to buy some handmade goods from a supplier in Thailand. With mBridge, you could pay your supplier directly in their local currency without having to worry about exchange rates or hefty bank fees. Or let's say you're an immigrant worker in the US, and you want to send money back home to your family in Mexico. With mBridge, you could do it instantly and securely, with just a few taps on your phone. No more waiting in line at a money transfer agent or paying exorbitant fees. And it's not just about individual transactions. mBridge could also be used for larger scale payments such as cross-border trade finance, supply chain management, and even humanitarian aid. The possibilities are pretty much endless. Section 8. Navigating the challenges, liquidity, regulation, and more. Now I know what you're thinking. This all sounds too good to be true. There have to be some challenges, right? And you'd be absolutely right. Implementing a system like mBridge on a global scale is no walk in the park. One of the biggest challenges is liquidity. To work seamlessly, mBridge needs enough of each currency available on the platform at all times. It's like making sure there's enough cash in the ATM so everyone can withdraw money when they need it. Then there's the issue of regulation. With so many different countries involved, coordinating regulations and ensuring compliance is going to be a major headache. It's like trying to herd cats, except the cats are central banks and financial regulators, and of course there are always concerns about security and privacy. After all, we're talking about sensitive financial information here. mBridge needs to be as secure as Fort Knox, if not more so. Section 9. The geopolitical chessboard, mBridge, and the future world order. Now let's talk geopolitics because things are about to get really interesting. mBridge isn't just a technological innovation, it's a potential game changer in the global balance of power. As we discussed earlier, it could challenge the dominance of the US dollar and usher in a more multipolar financial system. Some experts believe that mBridge is part of China's grand plan to internationalize its currency, the yuan, and reduce its reliance on the US-dominated financial system. Others see it as a way for China to exert greater influence on the global stage. The truth is, it's probably a bit of both. China, like any other major power, is looking out for its own interests, but that doesn't mean mBridge can't also be a force for good in the world. If implemented correctly, it could promote financial inclusion, reduce poverty, and foster greater economic cooperation between nations. Section 10. Voices from the front lines, insights from key figures. Now let's hear from some of the key players in this whole mBridge saga. Mu Changchun, the head of the People's Bank of China's Digital Currency Research Institute, has been a vocal proponent of mBridge. He sees it as a way to create a more equitable and inclusive international financial system. Former PBOC Governor Zhou Xiaochuan has also spoken highly of mBridge, calling it a promising platform for cross-border payments. He believes that it could help to reduce costs, improve efficiency, and enhance financial stability, but not everyone is so optimistic. Some critics have raised concerns about China's intentions, arguing that mBridge could be used to circumvent sanctions or promote its own geopolitical agenda. Others have pointed out the technical challenges involved in implementing such a complex system on a global scale. Section 11. The road ahead. What's next for mBridge and the future of cross-border payments? So, what does the future hold for mBridge and the future of cross-border payments? Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The truth is, it's still early days. mBridge is still in its pilot phase, and there are many hurdles to overcome before it can be rolled out on a global scale. But one thing is for sure, the world of international finance is changing rapidly. The rise of digital currencies, blockchain technology, and new payment platforms like mBridge is challenging the status quo and creating both opportunities and challenges. SWIFT could integrate with mBridge CBDC cross-border payment system. During a panel at the Sibos banking event today, Mu Changchun said that the mBridge cross-border CBDC payment system could connect to traditional payment systems, including real-time gross settlement systems, RTGS, and faster payment systems. "We are looking forward to possible cooperation with SWIFT in the future," said Mr. Mu, who leads the Digital Currency Institute of the People's Bank of China. mBridge uses distributed ledger technology, DLT, and wholesale central bank digital currency, WCBDC, to enable direct cross-border payments without using SWIFT or correspondent banks. Participants include the central banks of China, Hong Kong, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, and the UAE, as well as the BIS Innovation Hub and numerous commercial banks. The initiative reached the minimum viable product MVP stage in June. By removing correspondent banks as intermediaries, payments are faster and cheaper. Today it was revealed that mBridge is also being used for FX payment versus payment, PVP. The possible connection between SWIFT and mBridge is noteworthy given that mBridge is a potential SWIFT competitor. Sibos is SWIFT's annual event, so SWIFT deserves credit for providing a public platform for mBridge. A collaboration between the two could be mutually beneficial. For SWIFT, its future role might evolve into being an integrator, as its recent CBDC interoperability and DLT trials have demonstrated. From mBridge's perspective, it could expand the payment options available. Former People's Bank of China, PBOC Governor Zhou Xiaochuan, also spoke at Sibos, noting that some view China's CIPS and mBridge as substitutes for Visa and SWIFT, but this is not his view. However, he expressed a hope that SWIFT could have better governance, noting that SWIFT's governance was apolitical until the 9/11 attacks. mBridge and the dollar. While mBridge has been touted as promoting local currency usage, Governor Zhou said he believes that mBridge will have little impact on dollar usage. "In my mind, I think mBridge does not exclude the use of the dollar yet," he said. However, he believes the dollar's status as reserve currency is up to the U.S. government. If the U.S. government would like to use the U.S. dollar as a sanction tool, it may reduce the feasibility of other countries to use the U.S. dollar, he said. He added that liquidity, particularly the availability of currency swaps, is also important for a reserve currency. mBridge's application sweet spots. PBOC Deputy Governor Lu Lei spoke about some of the mBridge applications. One is the usage of mBridge for FX payment versus payment, PVP settlement. The BIS and CPMI have frequently highlighted the ongoing risks in foreign exchange FX settlement. CLS, the FX central counterparty, only provides settlement in 18 currencies. Every day, trillions of dollars in FX transactions are subject to settlement risks. The exposure in Hong Kong and Singapore is larger than the entire capital of all commercial banks combined. Hence, the use of mBridge could address some of these risks by enabling instant atomic settlement of the currencies exchanged using PVP. Governor Lu also highlighted that banks currently poorly serve remittances and cross-border e-commerce transactions. They have small values, are complex, have high KYC costs, and limited profitability, which is why fees are so high. mBridge could help to address these issues. Li Shupui of the Central Bank of the UAE sees three opportunity areas for mBridge. First are the ones already mentioned for transaction banking, the combination of fast cross-border payments and FX PVP settlement. Secondly, he noted the trend of connecting domestic payment systems internationally and cross-border card transactions. Currently, for the settlement between banks, these often use deferred settlement, whereas mBridge could help with instant settlement. Thirdly, tokenization and the market for tokenized assets will expand. Hence, mBridge could be used to settle cross-border transactions in the future. Mr. Lee gave an update on mBridge's progress. He said there have been a few hundred transactions so far, representing the equivalent of a few $billion. His UAE colleagues estimated that last month's transactions increased by around 35%. Progressing mBridge's technology. Turning to technology, the mBridge ledger is decentralized, with central banks and commercial banks operating their own nodes, databases, and key pairs. According to PBOC's Mr. Mu, who leads the technical subcommittee, each bank has autonomy over its own system. Central banks participate in the blockchain consensus, but commercial banks do not. One challenge encountered is unstable network conditions. The consensus mechanism was upgraded this year to help, increasing the efficiency by 30%. Mr. Mu said this involved weak certificates. We may have misheard and hope to clarify. On the privacy front, currently mBridge relies on a randomly generated method for pseudonymous identifiers. However, they are working on a zero-knowledge proof solution, ZKP, which should hide rather than obfuscate information. The target is to launch this in 2025. While part of the system is based on Ethereum, some of the technology was developed in China, including the novel consensus mechanism. The BIS is in the process of hiring vendors for third-party code reviews and open-source assessments. The aim is to fully open-source the code in the future, but for now, all the central banks have access to the source code. Implementation challenges to so far. Meanwhile, Alisara Mahasandana from the Bank of Thailand outlined a few challenges encountered by the commercial banks during the early pilot phase. Banks have to pre-fund mBridge payments, whereas traditionally they relied on correspondent banks for this. Plus, the banks need to manage the liquidity of both fiat currency and the CBDC. In terms of FX, there is no wholesale FX market for CBDC, so banks have to do the trade in fiat currency and then use it for the conversion of CBDC. Regarding regulation, the banks had to introduce additional processes to adhere to the AML and CFTC requirements for each counterparty jurisdiction. The potential integration of SWIFT with the mBridge cross-border CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency Payment System, highlights a significant development in the future of international payments. mBridge, which is built on distributed ledger technology, DLT, facilitates cross-border payments using wholesale CBDCs without relying on traditional intermediaries like SWIFT or correspondent banks. The system is designed to make transactions faster, cheaper, and more direct between central banks, which are key participants alongside countries like China, Hong Kong, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, and the UAE. During a panel discussion at Sibos, SWIFT's annual banking event, Mu Changchun from China's Digital Currency Institute expressed the potential for cooperation between SWIFT and mBridge. While mBridge is seen as a potential competitor to SWIFT, a collaboration could be mutually beneficial, with SWIFT's role evolving toward interoperability between various payment systems. This would also build on SWIFT's previous trials around CBDC integration. mBridge has already reached its minimum viable product (MVP) stage, allowing it to enable direct cross-border FX payments through a payment versus payment (PVP) mechanism, which reduces foreign exchange settlement risk. The integration between mBridge and existing systems like real-time gross settlement (RTGS) or faster payment systems would enhance cross-border transactions further. The challenges for mBridge include liquidity management and regulatory compliance, especially concerning AML, anti-money laundering, and foreign exchange trading. Nonetheless, the decentralized nature of the system, which gives central and commercial banks autonomy over their nodes and databases, along with ongoing technological improvements like zero-knowledge proof, ZKP, for privacy, aims to address these concerns. If SWIFT and mBridge do integrate, it could increase the efficiency and security of cross-border payments, making them more inclusive, especially for areas such as remittances and small-scale transactions, which are currently poorly served by traditional banks. This would represent a significant step in the evolution of global financial systems, enhancing options for both traditional and blockchain-based platforms. For SWIFT, this collaboration could ensure its relevance in an increasingly CBDC-oriented financial landscape, while for mBridge, SWIFT's network would provide access to a broader range of payment systems and participants. The potential integration of SWIFT and mBridge is a fascinating development in the evolution of cross-border payment systems. As the global financial system increasingly embraces central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and distributed ledger technology, DLT, mBridge stands out as a pioneering project for enabling direct cross-border transactions using wholesale CBDCs. The fact that mBridge could potentially connect with traditional payment systems such as SWIFT marks a significant shift in how international payments are processed and could have far-reaching implications for the financial landscape. Whether mBridge will ultimately succeed in revolutionizing cross-border payments remains to be seen. But one thing is for sure, it's a fascinating development that's worth paying attention to. So buckle up, folks, because the ride is just getting started. Don't miss a notification, subscribe. Thank you.